All right, moving right along to the final evening of the night, which is Code Enforcement Committee meeting called to order at 8:54 p.m. on October 29th. All right, we have already had the silent meditation and pledge earlier. Madam Clerk, may I please have a roll call?
Roll call. Chair Urbom.
Present.
Vice Chair Perella.
Here.
Member Lightfoot Ward will not be in today. Village Clerk Janice Jacoby, Christia Liu, and sitting in for Attorney Geller, Attorney Elbert. You have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? I will second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We are in the first good and welfare for code enforcement. If anyone has anything to say specifically on code enforcement, we are doing a general review in the next item. Seeing none, moving on to the next item, which is item F, the general review. Officer Simmons.
Chairperson.
As if you
May
would.
I ask
Oh, yes,
you-
please. Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry, just one
Yeah.
thing. I apologize. I did not recognize our Public Works Director, Mohan Thampi, was also present for the Public Works meeting, as well as Mr. Adam Simpson, who is our Public Works Coordinator. And of course, we do have Mr. Officer Fitzgerald Simmons. I apologize, I was remiss in not introducing the team that came, and they're the ones that are making these things happen, so my apologies, but thank you for
Yeah,
that
I'm
moment.
sorry. I apologize. Thank you. Thank you for being here and
All right.
for the work you do.
As Officer Simmons is coming up. So as far as code enforcement goes, a lot of the issues over the past year, even 2 years, that have been pretty consistently brought to the attention of code enforcement specifically. Really, we've made a lot of progress on moving quite a few things towards planning and zoning, where planning and zoning is now got it on their radar, taking over the next steps, and then now both Placerbia and Cordino Group are working within that capacity to bring some specific issues forward in terms of changing the ordinance. So before Mr. Simmons gives his update and general report, I do want to say that that code enforcement is kind of where the rubber meets the road. So frequently, as I've gone through this process, so I've been involved with code enforcement since I came onto the council about 6 years ago. And our code enforcement has evolved, radically since then for the positive. So I would just say as a preface to the report that we're about to hear for all the residents' benefit, there may be times where you are even making complaints yourself or otherwise noticing that you may be talking to one neighbor and they're talking about citations they've received, and you're looking at another property where you're like, well, they should have citations. Quite frequently, that other property is being cited, and they are going through the process of dealing with those issues. So to that regard, I would say the evidence of that is our reinvigorated magistration program. So there had always been a budget for and even a prescription for, a process of magistration as issues essentially are not resolved, and really we need mediation between the village and the resident to kind of, solve it, right? And so that process had not been utilized for a long time, 20, 30 years perhaps. And so in recent history, certainly with the arrival of Officer Simmons, we have had a pretty successful magistration program. As I've seen the calendar each time these come out, it's pretty full. There's a lot of activity. There is a lot of resolution. And with all things with governance, sometimes they do take time. But I do want to say that, still waters run deep. And I know that a lot of residents have concerns in terms of, knowing that there's supposed to be action taking place on a property, but there may not be. I do want to assure, as you'll hear from Mr. Officer Simmons' report, that there is quite a lot of activity, more activity than ever before as far as code enforcement goes. And while not a perfect process, we're in a much better place now than we were, even just a year ago, and certainly going back, 2 years, and monumentally so going back, 3 years or more. So with that, Officer Simmons, just in general, questions, concerns, compliments, complaints, and types, and whatever you have to present for us.
Yes, Code Officer Fitzgerald Simmons. Let me begin by, for the record, explaining to everyone that per Florida law, Chapter 162, your name and address is required to file a complaint. It is required by law. You can't be anonymous. If you call in and you file a complaint anonymously, there is no method of enforcement from the code enforcement that can take place because it is illegal. Furthermore, a lot of residents do complain at the fact that they may have received a code violation to address something and their neighbor has not. In defense of that, a complaint may have been filed that meets the law requirement and requires immediate investigation. Unfortunately, the village does not have the resources for me to go house to house, block to block. So currently, as it may stands, that I am more reactive than proactive. Just as every other department within the village is all individually ran, a lot of us do the responsibilities of multiple in a certain department. I don't know how familiar you are as far as code enforcement is concerned, but at a bigger municipality, the code enforcement department makeup is the code manager, then it's their supervisors, then it's their senior code officers, then there's their code 2, and then there's their code officer level 1, in addition to the administrative support that strictly handles one thing in particular for administration. I currently do all of that alone by myself. So I understand there's been a huge issue regarding that, but trust me, I see it. I'm trying to tackle everything as it come. There are some things that I'm responding to. There are some things I'm being proactive about, which leads me into one of the biggest pushbacks as far as the code is concerned, and that is the swell area and the landscaping. Miami-Dade County does require your swell to be solid sod. It's not El Portal, it is Miami-Dade County. You do have alternative options when it comes to the landscaping, primarily in the front yard, because that is what is visible from the public, but it should be applied to even in the rear of your property, primarily the setbacks. The purpose of the setback, the purpose of setback areas, the purpose of the swell area is strictly for retention. It controls runoff. Runoff from your property, runoff from the right-of-way, and that's what absorbs the water a lot faster. There is a big problem in the village with paved, swelled areas. Aside from it being paved, there are impervious materials. There's gravel, there's mulch, and there are a lot of other things in lieu of swell. So that's something that I've been kind of proactive about and trying to address immediately. And of course, like I say, it's a huge pushback. So if your swell area is paved, there should be some record of a permit, considering this construction on the right-of-way. There should be some permit or variance on file. If I have none, you will be cited for, and you will be required to remove the paved area and replace it with sod, as well as the individuals that is bare or have gravel. Currently, as previously stated, there are a list of code recommendations to help improve or strengthen our ordinance that was submitted to our planning and zoning department. Is currently being reviewed, and hopefully there can be some code amendments taking place. I believe there soon will be something, a workshop to allow the public to give some of their input.
Yeah, I can actually add to that and say if residents wanted to look at the most recent planning and zoning committee meeting, so if you're watching this on a YouTube channel somewhere in the future, that would be the planning and zoning committee meeting for El Portal from October of this year, being 2024. That schedule was actually prescribed by Pluserbia at that meeting, so residents will be able to reference that meeting to have a better understanding of the anticipated schedule, specifically of those items. So,
And I can add to that, once we have it all ironed out, we'll post it for residents and also, get it out to everyone that way as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, all right. So for the record, the code applies to all, and I will be enforcing it evenly. I understand the circumstances regarding certain residents, depending on where they're located in the village. Some have more forest than others, so they have issues with the survival of these materials. I completely understand that, but there is no exception in the code for those residents. So I must apply it evenly. I do give a recommendations. One of the biggest recommendations, especially if you have a lot of forest, you could have it thinned out. There's treatment options. So there are alternative options to help, whatever material you do place down, it thrive. One of the most recent and uptick complaints that I have been receiving is about trash receptacles. To be completely honest, trash receptacles, literally everyone in the village is in violation of it. So, as previously stated, if I can't cite everyone for this particular violation, then I cite no one. So a lot of people complain saying like, oh, it's one person on the block. Literally everyone is in violation because the way the code is written, it must be stored to the side or rear your property hidden from the general public. It's either at the curbside, in front of a driveway, or in the front lawn. So literally everyone is in violation of this. So I came up with an idea. I'm in the process of developing a door hanger, particularly for this one violation, which will allow me to be more efficient versus going through the entire code enforcement process for the trash receptacle. Bulk, just a FYI, when it comes to bulk on the swell is health and safety. The swell is the right-of-way. So anybody has bulk on the swell, what's taking place is I develop a bright orange sticker that is a form of informal enforcement that just informs you that this is a violation. When you see that sticker, just be aware that I've taken a picture and I've created a work order to have the trash removed. If the village removes the trash, you will be billed for whatever it costs the village to have this remedied. Just another reminder, I want to encourage residents, primarily the residents that are doing tree removal. I understand that per House Bill 1555, that if you have an arborist report, that you're not required to notify any local government regarding the tree removal. To at least submit it to myself, the village manager, the mayor, or one of the council members, so we're aware of it, because we do receive the phone calls. And as previously stated, if we don't have it, and you're not required to submit it to us, so we're completely just at a loss at what's going on. If you have any open permits to do active construction at your property, please have it displayed in a conspicuous place. That way, I don't have to chase it down to, it's a runaround. All of these things are time consuming. And as previously stated, it's just me. It's solely my responsibility. In addition to that, this is the biggest one. Please inquire. You can reach out to myself, council members, the manager. Please inquire about something in particular you want to do at your property, instead of just doing it without being aware. Because one of the biggest things, my neighbor has it, so why I can't have it? There's a term that is considered as legally non-conforming. So considering the adoption of the code for certain violations came in place in 2018, a lot of things may have existed before any of these codes were adopted. So therefore, the village cannot make them conform to whatever the new code is if it existed prior to. So I encourage you all to just please reach out prior to doing something that, you're not completely sure of or you just unaware about, because every time something I do at every property, especially properties that I have yet to even scratch this. There's a lot of the village I haven't even been able to scratch the surface of, but every property that I do come across that I may have cited or plan to cite, I do an in-depth research. Laserfish is a program that the village utilizes that has a record of anything that was ever submitted regarding this property. So that's step one, that I have to research all of these records on this property. And if the property was built in 1930, then we talk about there's times I had to comb through a property that had 1,000 records for permits, anything regarding the property. That's the first step. And then I bring up old pictures to see exactly when it did exist, when it if it previously existed or not. And then that's literally the first step of the code enforcement process. So I definitely encourage everyone to at least just give me a call to inquire. Considering, the enforcement, it has been happening a lot. A lot of people do call and inquire before, and there are others is like, oh, well, my neighbor has it, so I assume it's okay, when actually it's not, and then that will also result in a code violation. Last and least for the record, I just want to be transparent about something in particular. There are certain code violations by state law that are considered as health and safety, transient, or irreparable and irreversible. And per state law, you will automatically receive a citation for this. There are other code violations by state law that requires me to give you a courtesy notice. The courtesy notice is the first step in the code process. It's informal. It has no fines or fees associated with it. And by law, the most amount of time I can give is 30 days. I know, the code enforcement process is a foreign concept to a lot of individuals, and I'm required there are 3 government entities that I must follow as far as the enforcement process is concerned. That's state law, the county ordinance, as well as our local ordinance. So just know, because that's another thing, a lot of people are unaware about, why it's an automatic citation, why I have this short amount of time, why am I being penalized daily? And in addition to that, yes, we do have, I believe it began in June of last year, our special master hearing. So the way the code process works, if you were given a courtesy notice, the next step is a notice of civil infraction. You fail to comply with that, then the next step is the special master hearing for us to impose a lien and record it with Miami-Dade County property. Like I say, certain violations, there would be no courtesy notices, automatic citation. One of them is the boat trash and debris. So that's pretty much.
No, that was great. That was a fully thorough review, and I greatly appreciate it. There's a lot of good information in there for residents. So, for example, residents should know that we've had a few things come through with council from these magistration processes, and we've issued a couple orders of fence removal. We've certainly taken steps to, the resident was certainly seen it as a penalty when they've already done work and paid to have work done, and then they receive an order to have that work taken out. So in that regard, also, I would say there are some times where it's, a unique circumstance, and the magistration process has prompted the resident to go through a variance process. And anyone who's attended any of our planning and zoning meetings recently would know that variance process here in the village is getting incredibly restrictive. We are not rubber stamping variances, but there have been some residents who have, gotten relief from their code enforcement violations by obtaining a variance, and so from my perspective, the code enforcement office as a whole seems to just be working the way it's supposed to be working. We are incredibly grateful to Officer Simmons for the work that he does do, wearing multiple hats each day. It is a priority list each day, and we haven't even scratched the surface on new construction, which is really a considerable amount of time that Officer Simmons spends. So outside of the day-to-day just residential activities goings on, there's this whole other animal out there of these new construction and remodels that, if he's not really prioritizing that, these are circumstances where we have an opportunity to make sure everything's done up to code from the beginning so that that property can exist, well into the future, staying in compliance as opposed to beginning out of compliance. And so I know a couple of years ago we had someone in the village trying to flip a property. They came in, they did not do their due diligence at all. It was a young kid, first time out on a flip, and finds out the property had like a $300,000 lien on it, right? And then it became a point of, well, no one told me about this. And it's like, well, it's in the records, and there's, so I just want the residents to know that this magistration process has been incredibly effective, and we are, day by day, slowly but surely, achieving the goal of, uniform application in the village and things like that. I'll let anybody else speak to how they want, but I do want to say, Officer Simmons, thank you sincerely. I personally know, the efforts that you do put out each day, and you do a yeoman's job of navigating all of that, because part of that also is, I believe you might have a career in diplomacy as well, because it's not for the faint of heart to go out there and interact with residents whose property it is, and you have a constitutional right to enjoy your property. And so that's where things can become heated and temperatures can rise, but you do a very good job of explaining what those reality are. And I will just say to the council that, and Manager Lou, you know this even better than I do, that really a lot of the difficulties that Officer Simmons faces each day is still due to the fact of sometimes an outdated code where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It is not, Officer Simmons does not have the ability to, even though he might agree with the resident in terms of what the code should be, or, it's at the end of the day, it's neither here nor there, because the code is what we're dealing with. And so the impetus remains on the council to make sure that we have a code that's workable, not just for the residents, but for our officers who are out there every day, making sure these things get done on our behalf, and we're greatly appreciative for it.
Thank you for, yes, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just thank you for creating that door hanger with a friendly reminder of code violation. That was something that I actually had mentioned it to the village manager a few years ago. And that's why when you created this paper as a friendly reminder of, the trash cans and the ball pickup and all of that. So it's about educating the residents, and mostly the new residents that have been here for less than a few years. Like you said it before, the code hasn't been implemented for more than 10 years. So now that we have a good code enforcement and that actually know the stuff and know the law. I understand a lot of people is not happy about it, but it's just the way it is. It hasn't been for many years, and but we gonna keep our village to look beautiful and with greenery and lush, and And it's funny because now that I was door to door, hanging some door hangers myself, I had very good vibe from, and I have to say it because I live here on the east side of the village, on the northwest side of the village, which are the majority of the long-term residents, owners. The vibe is a little different. People actually, maintain, I don't know if you agree with me, doing code enforcement around, but they keep their front yard, at least their front yards are, way better. You don't see many trash cans out, and when you come to this side, everybody starts complaining about, because they don't want to cite it because they extended their driveway or their easement, or they put the big rocks in front of their yard where they're not supposed to, and you know, and on the easement side. And just friendly reminders like that, without going through the whole process of code enforcement, it's just great, because it's about educating and that's. Thank you for that.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
Very good. All right, with that, I would, does anyone from the audience have anything to address with code enforcement this evening? Seeing none, yes, go ahead. Yep.
Thomas Pulliam, 205 Northeast 86th Street. I have a question, like, point of clarification. How is it that, like, the trash cans is something that is, you know, choosing not to enforce? Because you're saying it's, like, so many people, almost everybody. Isn't it similar with the swale, or how do you see that differently?
Well, in reference to the trash receptacle, so say for instance, each block common on regular there is let's say if it's 10 houses, commonly there's about 7 in violation. So therefore, if I cite one, I must cite everyone. The code enforcement process is extremely time consuming. And considering the fact that a lot of these properties that I haven't been able to address anything else, while I'm there addressing a receptacle, I must address everything I see to be efficient and consistent. No one would like it if I was to cite them for that, and now I come back and I'm making my rounds on that block and I cite them again. So therefore, I had an idea to develop the hanger, because in the grand scheme of code enforcement, trash receptacle, it is a minuscule violation. For me to fine you $100 every single day because your kin is trash pickup is Wednesday and Friday, you're allowed to put it out the day prior after 4 p.m. So technically, it's only enforceable on Mondays and Thursdays and Sundays, not here on Sundays. So therefore, I feel it'd be more efficient with the door hanger. Now, of course, the trash receptacle is there, it's overflowing. Now we're having a completely different conversation, because now that's a nuisance. It's an attractive nuisance because of the vermin or the animals it may attract. So that's a completely different topic. But simply, the can is there and it's not in the area it's supposed to be on a particular day. Talking about going through the entire code enforcement process. And like I say, if I cite one person, I need to cite everybody, for the fact that that would be selective code enforcement unless there was a complaint. So if I'm at that property for a complaint, that defends why they only received a violation for it and not their neighbors. But if we're talking about me being proactive, if I cite that individual, I must cite everyone, because now we're getting into the area of selective code enforcement, which is illegal, which is harassment, which could be targeting, which could be discrimination. So to be consistent, fair, and efficient, that's my approach to addressing that particular issue.
Okay, and does that also apply to the location of the trash cans? Like, for instance, I know it's either our ordinances or the design guidelines, whatever, it's supposed to be, and I think you mentioned this before, you know, stored in an area that's not within the front setback, I think it is.
No, it's the side or rear. So outside
Side or rear.
Yeah, outside the day before
Yep.
pickup, it's the side or rear, hidden from public view.
Yep.
Majority of everyone either have it curbside in their driveway on their front lawn. So if I'm citing someone that has it on their curb or has it on the curb, the neighbor has it in their driveway, they're in violation as well. So I would need to address it there as well. But as you know, as I previously stated, when I'm there for one thing, I address everything. So we're not talking about just, okay, yeah, it's just the trash the issue. Now I'm looking at your landscaping, I'm looking at your swell, I'm looking at your driveway, I'm looking at the facade of your entire property. And even further, if I'm able to, once I go through the records and I gather more evidence, because this happens a lot, where I'm addressing one thing and now I observe all of these additional things as I go through the records. Now, you had a garage. Once I'm looking at new pictures of the property, oh, this was converted. This was a garage previously. Go through the records, there's no permit. Now you did a garage conversion without a permit, without council approval. So it's like a ripple effect. I'm there for one thing, and then it opened up, Pandora's box for a whole lot of other things. But that in particular, like I say, there's been an uptick in that specifically. So to be more efficient, considering how many people are in violation of that particular thing, I believe the door hangers would be more efficient. And as I stated, it is fair for me to extend everyone that courtesy and not just a certain area or particular people. But I will keep record of the people that I did inform, because the purpose of the special master hearing is to discourage certain behaviors. So if I've extended the courtesy of warning you previously, yes, you will be cited. And although, it's there this day, then you can apply the next day. It will be presented before the special master for something that is called a finding of fact. So therefore, every violation after that would be a repeat violation. So now I can just automatically fine you every single day is there. That's the way the process was worked to discourage certain behaviors. But if we're talking about, me going through the code process with every single person, and that being the initial reason, that's very difficult.
Okay, makes sense. I do have other code enforcement questions, not specifically for Fitz though, more for the chairperson.
Sure.
Okay, so I know in previous Village Hall meetings, people have asked about, and I watched the last Village Hall recording on YouTube as well, so I know this came up when you guys talked to Placerbia about a review of the code, but specifically sound ordinance and also lighting ordinance. Like I know lighting ordinance specifically, you and I chatted, and you said you were going to look at things over the summer, and then you
So-
had estimated September of this year.
So-
we would be discussing something. What's the status of that?
So Placerbia, from that last meeting, basically the three priorities identified for Placerbia to tackle first were essentially noise in all zones, lighting, and as well the swales. So I certainly advocated for noise and lighting, specifically so that there could be mitigation of drama between neighbors. I prioritized, at least I enumerated at that meeting to Placerbia that noise would take priority over lighting, but it would be noise and lighting in my purview. And then I know the swales essentially is rising to meet that priority level. So those three areas are where Placerbia has essentially been directed to put all of their efforts first. I may have something that would be workable and presentable, at least for residential zone 3 in terms of noise, at least to move us forward. But the larger issue with Placerbia is going to be like vendor, like commercial vehicles, noises and things like this, construction sound, the barriers between the different zones, and so they've prescribed a schedule of events that would also include town halls that essentially begins early in the new year. And so we are on the path to get these things done with noise, lighting, and swales listed as the top three priorities to tackle before we would move on to other things.
Yep, understood. So it's all outsourced to Placerbia? There's nothing
Yes.
the council
No.
is working on, or what you said you were working towards for September?
Right. So there may be something out ahead specifically just for zone 3, but
Which is zone 3, sorry?
just residential.
Okay.
But Placerbia is, the reason we contract with them is specifically their expertise, and they have demonstrated repeatedly over a long period of time that they understand like modernity. We're not gonna, whatever we get from them is going to last us a while. We will be prepared for the future with ordinances that they are bringing towards us, and this is a bit of I always just see government as like a very large ship, and you look at it in the distance and it's just not going anywhere, but then you take your eyes off it and then you try to find it again, and then you realize it's covered a considerable amount of distance. So I understand this is taking longer than
Yeah, you
I-
told me September.
And yeah, in my initial comments regarding my timelines, I was cautioned by more than one colleague to curb my optimism in that timeline. But we are. I mean, as it stands right now, we do have officially a urban planner with marching orders specifically for
Okay.
those things. So that is a definite change from where things were just even 2 months ago. So there is considerable progress towards a actual solution on this.
Okay, so I was under the impression that I assumed that you maybe were gonna be authoring something and bringing that forward, but I understand now
It was
it's
my
all
intention.
being,
It was my intention. Yeah.
outsourced to Pluserbia.
Well,
with
it
their
always
now-
was.
with
It
the-
always
with
was
the
going.
timeline that's been set
It was
up.
always going to be outsourced to Serbia.
Okay.
That would be me being a little optimistic. I'll take all of that responsibility. We are moving forward on it. We will get to completion on this. But as far as having that done by this month, it was my hope and intention. But we're in the right direction here. It's just. I come from the private sector, and even 6 years sitting up here, I still, have a bit of a learning curve myself. So, but we're headed there. The plan's in place. We're headed in the right direction, and things are in motion.
Okay,
So-
it's just, specifically with lighting, of course, that's something that affects residents every single night. So I understand timelines can change, timelines can take time, but I hope all of you also understand that, residents are just having to live with this in the meantime until something is worked out,
Yes, and
which is, really not good for health and well-being.
well, I'll tell you that I personally love the concept of what they call dark cities in terms of cities that have and understanding the different ways that. So even just having a sconce versus a naked bulb and all of this stuff. So this is where I'm saying that I trust Pluserbia to get us an ordinance that addresses those with modern terminology, with contemporary applications of how to achieve peace between our neighbors, honestly, and so people have a clear understanding of what expectations are, and then we have a code that can be successfully enforced as opposed to ambiguously argued, I guess was what I would say. So if that helps at all in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, and I can definitely articulate that to an incredible degree. But yes, so that's down into that micro level, lumens over distances on top of issue of naked bulbs. Okay, fine, the lumens aren't here, but I can still see the naked light. So
The beam, the
right,
color,
exactly,
temperature,
exactly. So these.
motion sensor or not.
Yeah, so these were all so these are all part of the instructions essentially.
Okay.
Issued to Pluserbia, and they're quite frankly on top of it. And we're not the only municipality they work with, and they work with other municipalities who have also high expectations, and are looking for codes that can get them, into the future and not be spinning wheels or throwing, good effort after bad. So.
Can I chime in for a
Absolutely.
second? So I'm not on the code committee. I'm just here because I wanted to get an update. And Fitz, like, I always learn so much listening to you. And please, if you could, reach out to the Public Affairs Committee as to your dissemination strategy. That would be great. I also just wanted to say quickly that a contract has already been signed with Pluserbia with concrete deliverables. I chair the Planning and Zoning Committee, and I think that document was part of our last agenda, so you can actually look it up and see, like, there is supposed to be a tremendous amount, what I requested is a tremendous amount of outreach in various formats at various times so that we can all come together and discuss with specificity what it is that is our issue. So I know lumens and all of this. So yes, like echo Councilman Erbaum's sentiment, stay tuned for those opportunities, and also those deliverables are in that contract. And I don't believe that Pluserbia would not give us those items at the time that we understood. And if they didn't give it to us, that would be a big problem for us. So there's no guesswork in this process as it is now.
Okay, great. I appreciate the update, and thank you for prioritizing light in your brief to them. Have to say, of course, I am disappointed as someone who's suffering from lights, you know, that it is pushed back further than, you know, what I was led to believe. Last question, different question, back to the swales that you were mentioning, Fitz, and the variance process, right? So are people doing variances for other types of swales? I know historically, and what's allowed in, I don't know if it's still currently allowed, it has been historically, but people could do like a U-shaped driveway and like kind of pave all of that impervious. And some of those are like, you know, decades old, which maybe there wasn't the same thoughtfulness around flooding, water mitigation as there is today.
Yeah.
Do those variances still
So
hold up? Or can people
Yeah, go ahead.
going forward get variances for that exact same thing?
Well,
Before he
go
says, I'll just say, anybody can apply for a variance at any time. So anything that someone wants to do to their property that is not permitted within the code as it stands, they are able to go through the variance process. And then
Yeah, no, and if those driveways were done with permits, regardless whether they're out of code with today's code, then is granted. It's
Yep.
unless they need to remove it and repave it again, then they'll have to comply to the new code. But if they're just doing repairs, that's less than whichever amount,
You know, repaving.
repaving,
So, I
we'll
mean,
have to
so
do.
if it's resurfacing, no
Resurfacing,
permit.
no
If
permit.
they're repaving, yeah.
Right, and something to that effect. We actually went through it's funny because we went through the whole process of doing, you know, like grandfathering the gravel on the swales and all of that. We went through the whole process, and then when Mr. Fitz came into the village, he's like, "There's no way. There's no such a thing by county code. There's no such a thing of grandfathering gravel because it is a safe."
It's a retention.
Health and safety, issue. So, you know, even though we went through the process and tried to accommodate whatever was already existing, it's not even allowed.
yeah, and the short answer is no. I mean, I
So,
certainly.
I'm sorry, and getting somebody like Pluservia that actually knows the code and they work with, you know, bigger municipalities is a huge advantage for us and help.
I agree.
What is the health and safety issue with gravel?
Oh, no, for the simple fact that on a swell per county code, it's not required. Your swell, you're only allowed your driveway approach, and then the rest should be solid sod because the swell area is a right of way, and the sole purpose of it is for retention.
Well, actually, if I may, it happened to me. I was going to, somebody was doing something in the front yard, and I stopped by to say, you know, FYI, you're not allowed to do that. Oh, thank you, you know, whatever. But as I was getting off my car, I slipped and I fall. Mind it, I have a back surgery because of the gravel that was there
Oh, wow.
on the swell. So it's kind of like, and we walk a lot, me and my wife with the dogs and whatever. So when you have gravels and then you pass through the sidewalks, it is dangerous. It is dangerous.
And then additionally for flood mitigation, so people can essentially pile up gravel to create, you know, something for them to park or walk on. But that gravel is not absorbing water, and then whatever the gravel, you know, whatever is underneath that gravel, it depends on whether or not that's permeable or not. So frequently, the same way that asphalt swales contribute to additional and longer flooding in the village locally with these storms, gravel essentially accomplishes some of the same effect. While it benefits that one, local area where it is, it's essentially compounding problems into the street and neighboring lots as well. So that'd be one other. Those two primary reasons: gravel being kicked out into the road, and then also as those gravel swales, as the gravel does go out on the road, just it shortens the life of the road itself, because now you've got all these constant impacts happening, on a small scale. And like if you ever drive on a paved street that is approaching a stoplight, and you notice that as you get towards a stoplight, the road starts getting wavy. That's because they paved that street and did not keep it closed long enough and they opened it up too soon, and heavy trucks started using that, and it's a braking zone. So what you're literally looking at ripples in the road created by vehicles hitting the braking zone, and most of that rippling happened very shortly after that work was done, when the asphalt was not fully hardened. And so in that regard, gravel out in the road shortens the life of the road. It is
So that will be important when we get the CITT money and start repaving some stuff too.
Yes,
right?
and some of the, I'll just say the last thought on that, some of the idea of that is, as we have the stormwater infrastructure program going on, some streets will be torn up. As we have the septic to sewer coming in, we'll have streets torn up. And one of the ideas is to have some funding in place that's whereas as a street is torn up, we're able to put it back with what we would like to have, which would be like a modern, like bioswale, something for, where you have the swale, where the street itself is literally designed to assist with flood mitigation specifically. So that is a concept that we're working towards. But again, I mean, the truth is, if we want to do our roads, our streets and our sidewalks in this village from one corner to the other, I mean, my estimate is got to be somewhere north of $60 million, to be perfectly honest, to do every single street in the village, every single sidewalk. I mean, I don't think I'm talking out of school to say we're looking at $60 million to do the whole village in one shot. I mean, it would be an astronomical number. One block, we're almost at $1 million. So I mean, if not more, yeah. So it's not for lack, and Blue Serbia has these plans for us, by the way, already. These plans are done. Infrastructure, the plans are done. We have the stormwater plans, engineering fully scoped, septic to sewer, we have the plans, engineering done, fully scoped. It's simply a matter of budget, what assistance
Funding.
we could get from federal, what assistance we could get from federal or state. So, with the health of the Bay coming into focus, we may, in theory, certainly with a different governor, we would have an avenue towards monies for our village, specifically for what, it means to the health of the Bay to correct some of these issues within the village. So, constant effort on these issues. So,
Thanks for the update.
good. Anything else? Thank you sincerely for your time tonight. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank
All
you.
right. With that, I believe we are on to the final good and welfare of the evening. Does anybody else have anything to say about anything at all regarding Village of El Portal? All right. Everybody get out and vote. And with that, I'll ask, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The Code Enforcement Committee meeting is adjourned at 9:41 p.m. on October 29th.